Good morning, everybody. We're going to start a little earlier than usual. We'll give folks just a few more seconds to trickle in, and then we'll kick things off. Well, okay, let's get going. If we have a quorum here, critical mass this morning. We have much to be thankful for on this Tuesday, February 16th. COVID cases are dropping like a rock. We want to do everything we can to keep that happening. Many of our friends and family are getting vaccinated. A lot going on in the world that's allowing for a lot of hope and excitement. A lot exciting this morning with Economic Alliance Snohomish County as well. This is Gary Clark's first day as the full-time CEO at EASC. If you can see Gary on your screen, you can wave to him and he can wave back to you. Gary is a successful recruit after months of rigorous research and a very competitive process. So we're just delighted that Gary has accepted the offer at Economic Alliance Snohomish County. And I want to say thank you to all of the board chairs and major stakeholders that participated in that process. Everyone just feels so good, Gary, about having you join us. We're just excited for you to start. You just want to say hi and a quick welcome, Gary?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for joining today. And it's awesome to actually see many of the folks that I'll hopefully be connecting with in the future. So thanks again, and excited to get there and start working.
For those of you that know me, for better or worse, I'm here to help out with Gary to help get him up to speed and transition. So if there's anything I can do to add additional leadership capacity at EASC over the next few weeks, please reach out to me and I'll help coordinate with Gary, and we'll make sure that Gary gets up to speed with all y'all, as they say in Southern Snohomish County, as quickly as we can. Well, without further ado, we are delighted to have what promises to be a fantastic program this morning. We're very grateful that U.S. Senator Maria Cantwell has joined us this morning to open us off, and then we will transition to what promises to be a very informative conversation and a great dialogue about the state of local journalism and local newspapers that is so critical to the U.S. and the world as a whole, and no one models it more than the city of Everett and the Everett Herald. So with that, I'd like to introduce Josh O'Connor, who will then introduce the senator. Josh O'Connor is the publisher of the Daily Herald, president of Sound Publishing, Inc. Josh was appointed publisher of the Daily Herald in April 2013. And as president of Sound Publishing, Josh is responsible for more than 40 publications, as well as Sound Press's operation in Everett. He enjoys the challenging dynamics of building successful community publication. Josh coaches a commitment to delivering relevant local news that directly affects the lives of those who raise families and work in the communities that Sound Publishing serves. For those of you on the call, please feel free to ask questions in the chat window. I will moderate those questions. We'll have very limited time for Senator Cantwell's questions. I know that there'll be a lot of questions. I know we'll leave a lot unanswered. We will make sure that Senator Cantwell's office gets those chat questions if there's an opportunity to follow up. But please go ahead and put those questions in the chat. I will help moderate that. And then we'll move on to the conversation about local publishing. Josh, please take it away.
Thanks, Chris. Really pleased to be here with you today. Good morning, Economic Alliance of Snohomish County members. Thank you for joining us this morning for our coffee chat. I'm joined today by Daily Herald Executive Editor Philip O'Connor, no relation, and a few other guests that I'll introduce in a moment. We'd like to discuss several important topics related to our industry today, including the state of media in North America, our role as the fourth estate, the Daily Herald's current focus and transformation, a real key partnership with the Community Foundation of Snohomish County, an initiative to expand the spectrum of voices within the Daily Herald called the Snohomish 100. And then we'll wrap up and give everybody an opportunity for questions today. So ironically, one of the worst affected industries during the coronavirus outbreak has been a profession that should have been reporting on it, newspapers. Some of the most trusted sources of news, local sources like the Marysville Globe, Arlington Times, Mill Creek View, and La Raza are slipping away, never to return. And unfortunately, the cost to democracy is great. It takes a toll on civic engagement, on every citizen's ability to have a common sense of reality and facts, which are the very basis of self-governance. But these acute losses are the result of an unfortunate long decline. More than 2,000 newspapers have closed since 2004, and many of those that remain are mere shadows of their former selves. It's clear that we must seek new ways to help pay for local independent journalism that plays such a key role in a vibrant community and democracy. In the fall of 2020, Senator Cantwell, the ranking member of the Senate Commerce Committee, released a report on the role of large tech companies and that they're playing in the decline of local journalism across the country. The comprehensive report, which has been discussed at committee hearings, contains state-by-state and national information on newsroom job losses, as well as recommendations for how lawmakers can address this fundamental problem facing our democracy. I'm so pleased and honored to welcome a true champion of democracy and a defender of the free press this morning, Senator Cantwell.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you for that introduction and for allowing me to be with all of you today. I'm joining you from Edmonds, Washington, and I saw the Olympics peak out a minute ago, and hopefully that means we're going to be on to some sunshine either today or tomorrow. But I'm so appreciative for the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County and all that you do. And I just want to say that, we continue to pay attention to all the issues of Snohomish County, making sure that Sound Transit continues to get the work done we need here, working with the county executive on problems that we had at the airport and one of the PPP bills not adequately taking into consideration the unique nature of that airport and getting that fixed. And obviously continuing to work on affordable housing with a whole mix of you. I think the last time we all were together was about a year ago when we saw each other for a big affordable housing announcement in Everett. And obviously, I'm looking forward to the coalition of people who are trying to improve Highway 2 and the trestle. So anyway, just a few things about the Economic Alliance. And Gary, I don't know how you pull it off. Your first day on the job and 100 people are here to greet you. So pretty good task for you to have accomplished. So congratulations on that. And it's really good to be here with Bob Jewell and Philip O'Connor, who you're going to hear from. And Chris, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. I could have just let him go on about the fate of the newspaper sector, but he mentioned a report that we did, spurred on by a lot of interest of basically the state of journalism across the United States, as was mentioned in the intro. And we decided to do the study because we knew that journalism was being impacted by a changing business model. And we were concerned that the impacts of that might actually take a lot of time to develop new business models or changes to the business model. And so we were very concerned about what would happen in the meantime. According to a 2019 Knight Gallup study, Americans favor local news over national news by a 2-to-1 margin. And 2018 study found that 3 out of every 4 Americans considered local news media to be the most trustworthy. So we knew that it was the most trustworthy news source, and we knew that it was so important to our communities, but we also know that it was being greatly impacted. And from those of you on the call today, I know you understand this because this is about the community that we all represent, that it helps tell people about what are the opportunities in the local community. It helps tell about local businesses. It helps talk about Main Street. It helps expose corruption. But I don't think that people really understood the economic impact of that leaving a community. There are real results and impacts from losing those in a community. For example, finance professors at the University of Illinois Chicago and University of Notre Dame found that budget deficits increase, government costs go up, and cities have more impact on the economic well-being when you lose the local newspaper. And we see the same effects for minority and ethnic communities who don't have the richness of that journalism. Well, our report outlined how we got to this dilemma. Basically, that as we continued to move to an information age. Almost the commoditization of advertising basically drove the cost down so low that advertisers who basically had been a pretty target-rich environment for local communities started to go online. So approximately 2,100 newspapers have been lost over the past 15 years. That's more than 1/4 of the country's newspapers. And according to a University of North Carolina study, 200 counties nationwide have no newspaper at all. And so, or some are just down to one newspaper. So estimates like these are pretty alarming. And what Chris was alluding to earlier is that as we saw this migration to content online, you had a couple of things happening. People thought, well, oh, I can get free content. The advertisers were in a target-rich environment where they could say, well, I want to reach, 21-year-old guys who might want to purchase X item. And so it sounded like a much more rich opportunity from an advertising perspective. And so the consequences is that newspapers have lost about 80% of their advertising and more than 40,000 newsroom employees, which is a big number over the last decade. So, but what our study showed is that local newspapers, being that most trusted source of journalism, can survive. They are establishing new models based on that trust, and that a community very much wants what I call perfect information. We have to have competition, we all know, to have perfect markets and to respond to incorrect information. Well, news provides an incredibly important perfecting for all sorts of information in our communities. So combined with that, we have seen these new models start to emerge where brands who want to be close to that trusted source of news are buying back into the local news markets because they want their brand to be associated with trust. Or as someone said in our report, we might buy and be commoditized to buying advertising, but we end up on a web page and a site next to something we'd never even wanted to be associated with. And so the consequences, they might have been able to get advertising for very reduced rates, but the consequences, it may not be the kind of relationship they wanted to make with the consumer in the end anyway. As Chris mentioned, though, there are some very unfair competitive practices that are going on with tech companies who tried to align relationships so that they could provide snippets of news information off of their websites, but not really driving the dollars in advertising back to the newspapers. We, along with many others, have called out this as an unfair competitive practice, and we want it to be examined, which I do think the Department of Justice is looking at a whole host of these, and across the entire globe, countries and their governments have been looking at how to adjust for this unfair practice. In the meantime, though, we're worried that that huge number of journalists that are being lost in the news industry will continue to be impacted. And we found that COVID obviously had an accelerant to all of that. I think just in a very short period of time in 2020, we lost another, I think it was 20% of journalism impacts that because of the COVID pandemic. COVID proved to be actually the best, if you will, application of local news. We all saw how desperate we were for that local news. We all saw how desperate we were to know county by county what was the public health information. And so in some ways, COVID has proven to us all in a very big way, we can't afford to lose local journalism. So 2 of the last COVID packages included one, a general small business program to help people apply for keeping a workforce during the pandemic. And the bill we passed in December expanded the eligibility of that. So many smaller newspapers, but owned by chains, could also apply and get help from that program. So we feel that these last two efforts will basically, if you will, put a Band-Aid on the bleeding challenge of losing newspapers, but we feel that we have to come up with what we're calling a midterm solution, something that will get us through the next 2 to 3 years in both stabilizing the news industry and the amount of workforce that exists today, and also a program to help us in some of these communities maybe rehire or the ability to bring 1 or 2 journalists back into the fold to help stabilize the economic situation. We know that what consumers want, they're getting from these key reporters. They're getting them not from accumulation of news selected from newspapers around the country and then thrown into the local news, but reporters who can cover the news as that local community wants to see and know about it. So we'd like to get this legislation passed in the next this year to help stabilize that situation. We're working with our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to try to get someone who wants to help in that regard so that we can move forward on this legislation. We hope that the COVID packages we passed will help, as I said, stabilize things for the next several months, but we're running out of time. And so that's why today's conversation with all of you is so helpful. We have to let people know. The other aspect of a report that was very shocking is that the majority of people in the United States do not know that local journalism is in trouble. They don't think it is. And so we have to figure out a way to communicate about it. And because there is a church and state barrier, so to speak, with journalism, we have found really like a critical barrier where journalists don't want to talk about, their own subject. And so it's made it an incredibly unique issue to try to garner people's attention on. But nonetheless, as was pointed out in the introduction, it is about our democracy. The fourth estate has been a critical part of the United States, holding accountable our government at all steps of the way, and we need to continue that. So thank you very much for inviting me, and I look forward to whatever you all think we can do to help elevate this issue.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your leadership on this, amongst many other things, but this ranks so high as we battle disinformation and sort of the widespread impacts of that. One of the 2 or 3 questions in the chat have sort of come around a theme of direct subsidies that the federal government might be able to help more with local media. Is there a future there to have the leadership offset some of the disinformation that social media is so prone to?
Well, we think a concept of tax credits for retention of a workforce is a good idea. And those retention credits are being used in other examples of, lots of different examples right now, mostly impacted by COVID, but there are other examples. So we think a retention tax credit would be a good idea, but we also think probably the more problematic challenge is that we would like to get some dollars into some sort of a grant program to also help rehire at some of these newspapers that 1 or 2, as I said, critical reporter who can make all the difference in delivering local content. And that's where it gets tricky, because you start getting into, well, why should the government, fund something like that? But we think it's essential now. We think there's a lot of examples where the government has done public-private partnerships and successfully pushed dollars out to local communities. And that's what we think could be done with that program.
Yeah, thank you. We'll just burden your time with one more question here, then we'll follow up with you with other questions that might pop up in the chat window. What else can the community leaders do with community assets such as the public library systems? We have Snow Isle and Snohomish County, and such an integral part of the communities. How can they be helpful to push out more awareness of local news sources and to engage in that manner?
Well, that's a good question. I feel like, they as a coalition could do something in endorsing, the effort to save journalism. I think that would be that would be great if they did. They are a powerful voice on everything from the E-rate program, which is about keeping broadband connectivity out there. I think, to me, the thing that I've always thought is fascinating about local journalism is I'm sure there is a model to monetize all the historic information that communities have. I know I did this myself this summer as we were looking at some family issues, went back and found out, things about my family's history. And I thought, well, if we didn't have these journalistic websites who had captured the history of the time, we would have never been able to access any of that. So I do see these models of, if we live in an information age, I'm sure there is a model for these even community newspapers. But I'd say the Everett Herald is probably the right target, the right size for who we're trying to find a solution for. Big metro papers probably will figure this out just on the size and scale of their potential readership or the communities they live in. But it'll be harder for places like the Everett Herald or the Vancouver Columbian or the TNT, I should say. And yet we all know how distinct those three communities are. There are very distinct issues that those communities care about, and it would be a tragedy if we didn't hear from or have them discussed in a broad way. So I would hope that, maybe they could be almost like the library system could help rally people all across the United States on a good government investment.
Cool, thank you. Your comment about the coalition is meaningful to me. I've had the benefit through my work to go to the national conferences, and you get 25,000 librarians in a convention center. They're a force to be reckoned with, I assure you.
Yeah.
It's a good coalition to support.
Yeah, no, I like that idea.
Senator, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. We can assure you this group will do everything we can to support these initiatives, and please let us know. And Cameron and the rest of your team, I appreciate that too. We're glad for your support of the organization. Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll turn it back to Josh to introduce the rest of your team, Josh, and do your presentation on local journalism. In addition to Philip, whom Josh introduced earlier, we're fortunate to have Bob Jewell on the call today. And Gary Clark, I was teasing Gary earlier for being new to the county with only just about a few minutes. This is his first official event at the Economic Alliance, or in Snohomish County, and that's about the only excuse you might have for not knowing who Bob Jewell is. So I won't burden you much further with more of a bio with Bob, but Bob is the former county executive and been a strong leader across all things Washington State and Snohomish County. So Bob, thank you for joining us as well. Josh, over to you.
Yeah, I just want to thank the Senator for taking time today, and just on behalf of all the publishers across the country, thank you for your support and just stepping up as a champion on our behalf. Now I'd like to introduce perhaps one of the greatest community builders of our generation. So this gentleman certainly doesn't really need an intro, but Mr. Robert J. Jewell has been a champion of all things Snohomish County for decades. I consider Bob a friend and a mentor, and asked him to tie the importance of what we do at the Daily Herald to the truest sense of community and the need for the civility that is really lacking across the country going forward. So Bob, over to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you for that kind introduction, Josh, and Senator Cantwell. Once again, thank you for your hard work on our behalf. Just to set the stage for my part of this conversation, this is a wonderful community. Snohomish County is a wonderful place to live, and the Everett Herald has played a significant role in that over the years to make us that civic environment that the economy can thrive, that people can talk to one another with some sense of decorum and hope for the future. I like to, my comments are centered around three particular aspects. That's the role of professional journalism in making sure that we do have that connection. Secondly, the impact on things economic. And then the third issue I think that is very, very important is the idea that the paper plays a significant role in maintaining and building community. I know that Larry Hansen is on this call, and I want to acknowledge the work that he's done as well. But there are things that make communities strong, and one of those one of those professional attributes that we've enjoyed are the people that have worked at the Herald over the years, and certainly the people that work there now. We've got a great deal to learn from the past. We certainly have some conversations that need to bind us together in the present, but we need to look towards the future. As the Herald has been important to us to building our community in the past, it is now more important to building our future. The idea that we have a chance to come to a source, and we don't always have to agree with it, but to come to a source that tells our local story, puts it in context with regional and national news, is so vastly important, so that the work that can be done on behalf by our elected officials to address things important to the economy, to address things important to the transportation systems that we're building. It gives strength to the Paul Roberts and the Dave Summers and the Nicole Smiths when they go to the Sound Transit Board, for just one example. But I think more than anything else, it provides a place where people can have confidence that the stories that are being told have some sense of building community and civic pride. I just can't imagine, frankly, not having the opportunity for the Herald to report on what's happening locally and putting that in perspective to these other venues that I spoke of. Fact of the matter is that it's a trustworthy organization. It needs to be trusted now more than ever. And I can tell you, I have this firmly held belief that, notwithstanding the Herculean efforts of Senator Cantwell and others, there's a lot of fixing that needs to go on in this community and in this country. And that's going to have to happen at the local level. And we have to have this source of professional journalism that comes out on a daily basis to tell us the local stories and how they fit in overall to the national and state scene. The future of the Herald, it's our responsibility as a community to make sure that the Herald stays in place. And I mean that sincerely. The idea that the stories and that we need to know as community members in Snohomish County will be delivered to us by any other media source is simply not accurate. For the folks who invest in our economy here, the people who employ people here, our story needs to be told so that the needs can be met in a number of ways: in public health, in transportation, in the idea of technology coming to Snohomish County, the ability that we have to welcome investments. These stories won't get told, and our elected officials won't have the ability to tell them unless the Herald is in place. Now, that's probably more of the technical economic sense, but I just want to riff a little bit here just on the importance of civility and civic pride that the Herald brings. And we're going to need more and more of that in the future. We have got to be assured and build on some of the things that Josh will share with you later. This idea that when you have professional journalists telling the stories about what makes our lives work better or worse, how we can become engaged, and more importantly, in this environment of we need to investigate that from that, meaning whatever the current situation might be, we need to have investigative journalism to make sure that the local story is being told so that we can become engaged with whatever the impacts of that investigative activity might be. So in sum, and I'm timing myself here, if you believe, and I certainly do, that the Everett Herald has played a role in building a civic and civil society and is struggling at this moment to continue to do that by a remarkable staff of professional journalists, and if you believe that our future depends on the ability to talk to one another from a trusted, accurate, neutral point of information, then the future of the Herald will be sound. But it's not going to be sound if we don't support it. And I know a lot of you have seen me in pitchman situations. I'll leave that to someone else, but I cannot imagine that we would allow the civility and the civics of this community to break down because we didn't support the Everett Herald. Josh, I think my time is about expired. I don't know if we have, excuse me, times for questions now or later, but I just want to leave in the listener's mind, particularly these folks who turn the economy. We're talking about three things here. We're talking about professional journalism, we're talking about community, and we're talking about the ability to do business in a place that is a trusted environment to do business and a place where the community cares about itself. And the Herald plays a significant role in that effort.
Yeah, Bob, thank you so much for your continued support and kind words. And agreed, couldn't have said it better myself. Let's do this. Let's maybe hold off on the questions until after the presentation, as you and I have a dual role at the end. Katie, can we go to slide 3, please? Just slide on our role as the fourth estate. Great, thank you. I want to kind of just remind everybody, this is maybe something you learned back in high school. So for some of us, it's going back a few years. The press today continues to play an active role in keeping government accountable. In the 1950s, the press monitored Senator McCarthy's communist investigations. In 1971, the press investigated the Watergate break-in. And most recently, in 2013, the press played a vital role in unveiling the NSA's mass surveillance programs of American citizens, leading to significant reforms to ensure the protection of American citizens and our civil liberties. Locally, media has helped shape local decisions and support community dialogue on many important topics, from local taxes, transportation, environment, education, and much, much more. And recently, and most notably, I think some of the work that we did here at the Daily Herald that I'm really proud of is the corruption and the unfortunate dealings of former County Executive Aaron Reardon, the 530 mudslide, and the Marysville-Pilchuck High School shooting, and now the coronavirus pandemic. And as the Senator mentioned, what we found over the last 12 months is that local Snohomish Countyites are turning to the Daily Herald and our work, both in print and digitally, in record numbers as they're looking for information from a trusted source in terms of where they can go for information to keep themselves safe related to the pandemic. Reasoned discourse is what every American needs, deserves, and desires. Thoughtful writing with the use of facts, balanced views, and a sense of sobriety are what the role of the fourth estate has always been and always will be. I'm going to ask my colleague, Philip O'Connor, the executive editor of the Daily Herald, to jump in now and talk a little bit about the focus on quality investigative journalism that we're doing at the Daily Herald today and what we're endeavoring to do in the future. Philip?
Great, thanks, Josh. I appreciate it. And Senator, thanks for your words, and Bob as well. I would just say that, you know, our most important public service mission, I believe, is our work in investigative journalism. There's really three sort of functions to that. It's holding power to account, we're exposing wrongdoing, and we're encouraging public debate. And I would just give you a recent example. Obviously, you know, we've had a tremendous national tragedy that's just occurred, and the focus of the media on this tragedy and the information that they are bringing to the public will be essential to the reckoning and rebuilding of what comes next. And I would just say locally, you know, the thing about investigative reporting is it is the most expensive and time-consuming reporting we do. And given the state of the industry and all of the problems that have been presented earlier in this discussion about the financial situations, that's what we've lacked, the ability to do that deep, important investigative reporting that truly impacts our community. You know, the community has stepped up to help us, and we'll talk a little bit more here about that in a few minutes. But I want to give an example of the kind of work that we've been able to do as a result of that support. I would just tell you the story of Milkshake, and I don't know if you guys are familiar with this or not, but we were able, through spending hours and hours and hours of plowing through YouTube video, to identify a man from the Arlington area who was among one of the principal people in terms of breaching the lines in the Capitol insurrection. And it speaks to what I was just talking about holding power to account. You know, that man has not been charged. We don't know if he's even been identified by authorities, but through our work, we've at least exposed what his role was that day in playing this central role in inciting the violence that occurred. That is exposing wrongdoing at its core. It's the mission that no one else would play but us. And then I would just say, the interesting thing about that story is this issue of encouraging public debate. It encourages public debate about the role of public officials in pursuing justice. But it's also interesting to me in the terms of the feedback I got from people who even questioned whether what that gentleman did was wrong. And so I think even that fosters a further discussion about what's occurred, the importance that we play in that debate and conversation. If we're to change minds about how we move forward and how we view the truth and facts, I mean, we're central to that role. And I would just leave it at that. Investigative reporting is essential, and we need the community's support to do that.
Thank you, Philip. Great points. Also want to just talk about next is just the strategic direction of the Daily Herald. Several years ago, we set a direction and a commitment to developing a sustainable model by transforming the business to digital and framing decisions and investments around that plan. Now, that doesn't mean that we're jettisoning from our printed publication. It's really kind of an audience first approach in terms of really focusing on content, developing really good content within our newsroom, and making vital investments in our journalists and in the technology we need to connect with readers in Snohomish County. Today, proud to announce that we are the 4th largest daily in Washington State, reaching over 276,000 readers per week. We are the top visited website in Snohomish County, generating over 11 million unique visits a year, or 875 unique visits a month. In terms of organizational alignment, we've taken a lot of the resources that we require in our newsroom today to really focus on content and product development. This has focused us to develop or hire new competencies for transforming our business in several areas, such as digital marketing services, audience development, digital programming, and data analysis roles. Our value proposition has always been a consistent, I guess, a commitment to striving to improve your customer experience through in-depth local news coverage, calls to action, better advertising experience and expertise, and making sure that your overall content experience, both in print and online, is the best it can be. At the Daily Herald, we believe news and information are the raw materials of active citizenship. That's why we work hard every day to report breaking news, examine community issues, and keep track of public agencies and influential organizations. And while we're at it, we jump at the chance to celebrate the things that enrich Snohomish County life, from arts and sports to people and the great outdoors. From an audience development perspective, we're improving digital competencies, where we've become local expert in providing digital sales solutions to merchants on Main Street. We've also have been able to add new subscribers during the pandemic. I think a testament to the value of information about local pandemic response and disease spread. But with these changes, as the Senator alluded to, we definitely need a bit of support to get through this transformation over the next few years, as we're starting to see a real connection back to the work that we're doing. So it led to a really unique partnership that we formed through the pandemic with the Community Foundation of Snohomish County. And I'd like to invite Philip back here to just discuss the details of that.
Great, thanks, Josh. Again, it's a unique partnership. We're kind of blazing a trail here with some other papers, and now it's becoming sort of a model that's being copied around the country. Essentially what we've done is entered into a partnership with the Community Foundation that allows them to accept donations, tax-deductible donations, that can then be directed to our reporting efforts in investigative journalism and in climate and environmental reporting. So I just checked this morning, and this is the humbling thing about the support we've had from our community. So we received to date more than 1,700 contributions totaling nearly $275,000. And that money is being plowed right back into our reporting. So it's a unique partnership, and it's another way in sort of what we call this triangle of support that we have now between subscriptions, advertising, and now this third leg. It's not the end all be all answer to our problems, but it is a significant boost to our reporting efforts. So we're proud of the partnership. We're proud of the support and humbled by the support that we receive from our community. And we continue to hope to build this as we go forward and look for new opportunities to cover areas that we believe need more coverage, but at this time we just don't have the capability to provide.
And Katie, can I get you to just move to that slide for us? There's next one. Perfect. If you're looking to support or looking for more information regarding our partnership with the Community Foundation of Snohomish County, you can find that on their website. And unfortunately, I didn't put that on there, but we'll get that out to everybody. Bob, this is where you and I jump in on a new idea that we've had in terms of just creating an opportunity for more voices in our community to contribute to a community dialogue around issues and opportunities that everybody sees. And so we're going to call this Snohomish 100. And I guess it comes down to this: Snohomish County communities need leaders from all facets of these communities that we have that make up one of the best places to live, work, and play. We need leaders to speak up and provide ideas, background, perspective, and encouragement as we continue to address issues that demand our focused and best efforts. So we are inviting you today to help us expand the spectrum of voices that the Daily Herald is able to offer on our opinion pages and online. We're asking for you to commit to writing for us a few times a year on subjects that you believe are important to your neighbors and fellow county residents. We're not seeking lengthy commentaries, but instead are looking for commentaries around 250 to 400 words, a little longer than most letters to the editor. And the subjects of these commentaries are up to you as the author, but we're hoping to encourage essays that address issues that are of greatest interest to citizens of Snohomish County. So this is your opportunity to praise or criticize, fairly please, to offer suggestions on how we approach a spectrum of problems, to provide greater perspective on things that have worked in the past or things that didn't, to inspire, and in the end, provide some certainty that problems before us can be resolved if we work together in a spirit of shared purpose and common goals. So I think the best way to maybe approach this is ask yourself the question, what do I most want the people of Snohomish County to know? And you can send your interests to me directly, and we'll make sure that you're part of a writing stable that will be able to contribute to the Daily Herald and voice these concerns going forward. Bob, do you want to add a few things there?
You bet. Thanks, Josh. When Josh and I talked about this and with others, what we hope, of course, happens is there's a conversation somewhere that goes, say, did you see that piece in the Herald? By fill in the blank. Secondly, I didn't know that. Third, how can I get involved in that? This opportunity for people to engage in the community because of a thoughtful presentation by community members delivered to us by that, once again, sole source of common trusted information in Snohomish County. Now, this is a significant effort that Josh and his team have put together, but the challenges we face, as that old idiom goes, the challenge gives us a great number of opportunities. This is truly one of those opportunities that a community with strong economic leadership, civic leadership, and political leadership should see as an opportunity to make this even a better place than it is at this moment. We've got some conversations to hold. We've got some conversations about equity. We have some conversations about how we make investments to maintain this community on a number of fronts: public health, transportation, economic investments. How do we make these decisions? And what this effort of 100 plus, we hope at some point, will provide to us is the opportunity to allow people to have these conversations, to get engaged. You know, this business of democracy is not a spectator sport. And we've got a chance to get people down on the floor, not watch the dance floor, but dance in this civic and community pride effort. And I'm so grateful to Josh and his team and the Herald for stepping forward to doing this. Now it's our responsibility. It's our responsibility to participate.
Yeah, thank you, Bob. Katie, can you move to the next slide for us? I have my email there for any participant today on the call that would like to participate and jump in. Please do so. We're going to start reaching out to folks next week. I consider you amongst the leaders in this community and would greatly appreciate your consideration and contribution going forward in this manner. Chris, at this point, we're open for questions. That's the end of our presentation today. I know we covered a lot from some of the efforts that are happening back in Washington, D.C. on behalf of Senator Cantwell and our electeds to how we're working on covering local here today at the Daily Herald. So happy to open up the floor to questions.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate all three of you and your leadership, and what a great framing that Senator Cantwell provided with her leadership on these important issues as well. I think there's one big elephant in the room. Someone addressed it really clearly with a question. The question, Josh, is how can local media help with the divisiveness of our country and our communities? How do you provide that balanced voice in a helpful way to bring us together?
Yeah, great question. Phil, I'm going to ask you to jump in on this, and then I'll probably add a bit of context at the end.
You know, I think the thing is that, again, we do provide that opportunity for the community to hold the conversations and discuss things. And I think a lot of times when people talk about the newspaper, a lot of times they're what they're really referring to is our editorial page. You know, as long as America has had newspapers have had editorial pages, and those editorial pages have tended to sometimes divide in terms of how people view things. People can have different viewpoints. That's fine. I think the most important role that we can play is to be a platform to drive community conversation. And I think that's the whole idea around Snohomish 100, is to diversify the voices of every that you hear on that page. So again, it's you know, within the news pages, our role is to provide unbiased, fair, accurate news, and we seek to do that every day, and that won't change. And I do frequently hear from people who question that, and I have to defend this every day in terms of the news decisions we make, the stories we select. But again, you know, I'm the final stop on that, and you know, it's my role to ensure that we do our journalistic mission, which is to provide fair and accurate information to the public. So again, I think as we launch the Snohomish 100, that's a great opportunity to expand the number of voices that we hear from our community, from people who have substantial input and impact on what, you know, how we move forward. And I think that's going to be a great benefit. I'm really excited about that.
Josh, can I jump in for just a second?
Yeah, please do.
As long as Senator Cantwell has been gracious enough to spend this much time with us. For many of you, you might not be aware that Senator Cantwell's first public service role, I think, was as a member of the Mount Lake Terrace Library Board. And I think over the years that she has served us so admirably, I'd like just to ask the Senator, didn't you use the Herald as a point of reference as when you were in Olympia and when you're in Washington, D.C., to get some sense of what it is that that's needed here in the community. That's the message that I'm trying to deliver. No one can tell our story the way that Josh and his team does, or the way that Larry and his teams in the past have. So maybe I'm overstating this, but I'd be very interested in your response.
Well, thanks, Bob. I first of all, I'm in a business where I'm supposed to be paying attention and supposed to be paying attention to what the issues of a community are. I mean, literally, it's a big aspect of the job. And so by that, I mean, I actually have people whose job it is to also be paying attention. But I'm telling you, there is no way that we could understand the needs or issues of a community without that information that's provided in the Herald. I think the great piece that the Herald did on Dan Rankin the other day, Bob, you and I worked together post OSO to try to say what were the, to get WSU involved with the community and the county to say what were the economic development opportunities for that part of our county. And, Dan has done a great job, but I think we spend a lot of time on CLT. We spend a lot of time on CLT. There's a huge new CLT facility that we went to a groundbreaking on over in Spokane, and we continue our work with the Forest Service to prioritize timber harvest based on CLT. But when I saw that article that you guys did, which was like a little update on what's happening with Darrington and CLT and the possibilities and the work with the port, there's just no way that we would have known exactly what was going on. And so I think there are other articles. I think you guys had an article about the fast ferries, right? I think you guys put that story out, which was also another, we've been to Dakota Creek Shipyard, which is just north of us in Snohomish County and Skagit County, and Dakota Creek is building fast ferry service for the Bay Area. They've put out, I don't know how many boats now for that Oakland, San Francisco connection. And when I was there, I kept thinking, well, why isn't someone in Puget Sound going to think more about this as an application for us as well, which would be a dual purpose of getting more shipbuilding at Dakota Creek and getting more transportation. But I read all the papers every morning, unless something really crazy is going on. And I think you're one of the only people that covered that story. And I was like, wait, why? This is such an important story. And it's such an important discussion that we need to have. So trust me, the Everett Herald is definitely putting front and center and some very important issues. And when I think about the juggernaut that the county is as an economy, particularly in aerospace, I mean, you just got to count on that publication to, bring up these issues. Otherwise, I don't know what we would do. I don't know what we would do. Like, it's not like you can phone tree these things. Hey, guess what's happening? And I'm saying I'm a person who's in this business, and I couldn't do it without the community prioritizing, communicating, bringing to light, holding accountable, all the things that, people articulated that you do at a newspaper.
Thank you very much.
I think a complementary topic with that, and the way that Senator Cantwell, you framed it there at the end, is that questions come through a couple of the chats as well, maybe back to Josh and Phil to lead this, but Senator Cantwell, interested in your thoughts too about with the good, the bad, and the ugly of social media. How do we balance content? What's the Herald's strategy of content deployment? The old school paper that very few of us get to our front door regionally. The closer you are to Everett, I suppose, the more likely you are to have the hard copy. But I consume the Herald online on my browser, on my desktop. And then social media, obviously, there is the upside of that to be able to reach out to those folks in the way Senator Campbell was probing at the end there. Josh or Phil, what's the strategy, the Snohomish 100, what's the deployment of that content of how that all comes together?
Phil, you want me to take that? Oh, you're on mute, Phil.
I want to make sure I understand the question, Chris, in terms of the difference between our digital platform or.
Yeah, so like some folks said in the chat here, hey, I read the hard copy and I wonder what I'm missing digitally. And then vice versa, there's many folks that only consume it in the digital format. If it doesn't show up on my Twitter feed, I'm not going to see it. So how do you juggle that?
Right. And that's a great question. And it's the transition that most newspapers are making now, where it's called digital first, right? That the print product, what we know is that the print product, that we continue to see a decline. The industry continues to see a decline in print readership. It's an aging population that relies on the print newspaper. And we realize that the future is digital. And, we're in the midst right now of working on a digital strategy. And what we know is that we want to give our digital audience more than just a copy of the print paper online. The opportunity in digital is to provide a much more richer experience because the space is unlimited. There are no constraints there. So, there are certain things you can't do. You still can't take the crossword with you portably and around the house unless you have although we do have a digital crossword puzzle package, but some people still prefer to be able to walk around the house with it through the course of the day and finish it. And that's a valuable thing. And the print product still is a valuable thing to many people, but the future is digital and we recognize that. And so we are working hard to make our digital experiences seamless and as non-frustrating as possible. And we're looking to build a more richer experience there for our digital readers.
Thank you. Listen, we are almost at our respected time limit. I'm sure that everyone, myself included, could go on talking with the four of you about a whole range of these topics, how it relates from a global perspective down to the local perspective. I'd like to just give each of you a quick, just around the room, to give a last word on your thoughts and contribution to our audience. Senator Cantwell, may I start with you? Any closing thoughts?
Well, just can't express how important this is for community. I loved the discussion that you just had and the fact that you are focusing on the community foundation. We all are overwhelmed with cable TV. Okay. We could just watch cable TV 24 hours a day, or yeah, we could, get a Twitter feed, but that is not going to be the important elements of what's happening in our community. And I see citizenry longing for this normalcy of information that is not just like what's most important this second or how viral can I make this thing be, but actually what do we need to keep our eye on really in our community, and that discussion. So I think you focusing it that way and offering for the community to give more input is the way forward. I didn't coin this phrase, but somebody else did, that collaboration is the next phase of innovation. Because you can have all the information, but if you aren't going to collaborate to implement it, then you really aren't, going to get there. And newspapers provide the ability for people to come together as a community.
Senator Bob, I turn to you for any closing remarks.
Well, just without being too repetitive here, I think that the message that I would leave is everything we've heard this morning through the presenters and through the questions, and I'm sure there'll be more to follow. I'm taking a look at the chat. People seem to enjoy this conversation. But I think at the end of the day, we've got to remember that the Herald plays a significant role. I think in some particular subject matter, the most significant role, to keep us civic, keep us civil, ask us to become engaged through this latest effort, of course, of the 100. It sounds like it's going to be 100 plus, Josh. But at the end of the day, we need a lot of education in how democracy works and how decisions are made and how people can make economic investments in sync and with confidence in that regard. And if we can get community members to engage with their thoughts and their wisdom, I think I'm at this stage of my career, I'm honing my listening skills. And I think that's what Josh and Philip are begging us to do, by participating in this effort that they put before us. And it's going to be a big mistake if we don't take advantage of this.
Thanks, Bob. Josh and Phil, then I'll close this off with some last second logistics. Josh?
Yeah, just really quickly, Senator and Bob, thank you so much today for joining us, for your work, for your support, and championing this great cause. To the Economic Alliance, Chris, Gary, and team, thank you again for allowing us this platform today to speak to leaders in our community about this important topic. And thank you to just everybody that attended. In this idea of or spirit of shared purpose and common goals, we ask you to let's band together, let's do this together. Your support is greatly needed and appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Phil, go ahead. Phil.
I was just gonna say, I'll end it the way I always do, which is, just imagine Snohomish County without us. And the pandemic, it was closer than we realized. And, the future looks brighter for us now, but subscribe. If you have a subscription, buy a gift subscription for somebody else. Donate. That means the world to us. We want to be here for the next 100 years.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you so much. Well, what a great way to kick off this week. Thank you for all your time and leadership, all of our speakers, all of our guests. It's been my pleasure to host and facilitate these coffee chats during my short stint as your interim CEO. Please join us next week on the 23rd for another critical topic for Snohomish County business, the state of the utility with the Snohomish County Public Utilities Districts. With that, please have a great rest of the day, a great week, stay safe, and thank you again. Bye-bye.